Hey everyone, welcome to Al's Freedom Bench. Let's take a look at the bench. Let's take a look at the bench. This bench was built yesterday by Dad and myself, and let's take a look at some of the things we used. A couple 2x4s provided by Grandpa Underbrink. Some 4x4s, we got 4 legs there, got those at Lowe's. The screws and all the hardware provided by Grandpa Shoemaker. And you'll see we got a nice laminate countertop that we got at Lowe's, and Dad was able to figure out how to mount the press here on the side. Got a nice block of wood where the press is mounted. Let's take a look here if we can see if we can get some primers decapped. So a couple things we got to do yet here before we actually start the process here is we got to add a couple pieces to the press yet. You'll notice this pocket right here has an opening where we've got this little plate here that we got to put on. That should sit right about there. And what that's going to do is that when we decap these primers, as we press up here onto the press and then we come down to pop them out, those primers are going to fall right there in that pocket. And then you'll see a hole there at the bottom where those primers are fall down, and we're going to insert a tube down here at the bottom so that when those primers fall in there, they're going to collect down there so that they don't get all over the floor. But you'll notice here on the hammer pole that we got to put our press rod in there. So I think what we got to do is take this little piece here, and that's going to go into the side there, and we are going to mount the arm so we can start pulling this press. Okay, so you'll notice here we've got the primer pocket plate on there. We've also got the tube down here installed. We've got the pull so that we can start raising the ram. Now the next thing we need to talk about is dies. So we've got 3 separate dies here, and each die comes with either 3 or 4 separate dies for each stage of the process. And we'll just go from right to left here. First one we've got a Lee Reloading 350 Legend die. We've got the Lee 223 Remington die. And finally, we've got the Lee 9mm Luger. So each one of these we're going to eventually put to the test, but I think for today's we're going to take a look at 9mm. So we've got probably 200 or 300 pieces of brass here for 9mm, and we are going to take a look at decapping these things using the Lee 9mm Luger die set. So if we take a look here at what we got inside the 9mm set, going from left to right, we'll start with the decapping and resizing die. Then next in line is the expander die, which expands the case mouth. And then the die all the way to the right is the bullet seating die. And then also inside there we've got a powder scooper, which we're not actually going to use, and then we've got the shell plate holder. And then obviously some instructions. So what we're going to be taking a look at tonight here is this guy right here. The Lee decapping and resizing die. And what this guy is going to do is we're going to get it into the press, and then you'll see that pin right there is going to be what actually, when we pull the ram up, it's going to pop out that primer, drop it here into this little primer pocket. And then what this thing does actually at the same time is if there's any deformities or if there's any different case issues or things of that nature, it's going to correct that for us. So in these pieces of brass, if there's any types of dings or dents or things like that, it's going to give us a brand new piece of brass essentially. That way everything's uniform in size and things like that. Another cool thing that we purchased along with this are the Lee quick change bushings, which allow us to set our dies and keep them set at the same exact measurement every single time. So once we start getting in a groove here, we don't have to keep, every time we switch a die, we don't have to realign the measurements, because every single time you put the die inside of this hole, you got to make sure that you twist it and make sure it's in the exact same spot every single time. And these, let's see if I can open it here with one hand. These are going to allow us to get that in there, place it down, screw it in there, and there's a little Allen key in there that we're going to be able to tighten, and that's going to keep these dies set, so every single time we use them, we can just pick them up, drop them in, and start going. So I'm going to get that all set up real quick, and then we'll get to popping out some of these primers. Alright guys, so we got the Lee bushing out of there, and we've pulled our first Lee quick change bushing out here. We've got the Lee decapping die inside the bushing, and we're going to install this guy up in here. That way we can get this thing set up. Push that button. Got it in there. Set the camera down. Get this thing tied in there. Alright, we've got this thing tight in here, and you'll notice here that we'll be able to spin this guy down or out depending on where we need to be lengthwise in order to pop this primer out. So you can see here, if I spin this guy all the way down, you can see that pin starts to show. And that's going to be what is able to pop this primer out. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus. You can see this is a once fired piece of brass already with the firing pin strike there on that primer. And we're going to use that pin to pop that sucker out. And you can see right there, as the camera focuses, that pin is going to pop that primer out. But first we got to make sure we get this thing to the correct length and then tighten her in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to back this guy all the way out. We're going to lower the ram to the top of the stroke. And then what we're going to do here is twist this guy in there until we hit the top of the ram. So we'll lift it back down a little bit. We're going to do a half turn to get us a little bit more. And then what we're going to do is, what's nice about these quick change bushings is there's a little Allen wrench key there. We're going to tighten that sucker down. So this guy here is going to be set lengthwise, and then once we got that tightened down, we're going to try to pop a primer out. We got everything set up here. We got the die tightened down. Let's decap 5 pieces of brass here. We'll see how it goes. Take this piece of brass, put it in the shell holder, raise the ram, pull it all the way down to the top of the stroke. We resized it. Deprimed it. Let's see if the camera can focus. And you'll notice there, if you can see it, you can see a line there as how far down that resizing die is giving it. So what we've got here is a Hornady case length gauge, which that sucker right there is the exact size and diameter of a gun barrel. So if this case drops in there and is flush, then that's what's going to let us know that we're safe to chamber in our gun. So you notice that it dropped in there real easy, drops right back out. Put it in there, and that can go into the good pile. So let's do a couple more here. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's the primer coming out. Got our nice piece of brass here. Drop it in there. Works. We're good. Do the next one. Do these last two real quick. Last one. Get that camera to focus. See the primer out of there? You can see that, how far down we resized. Drop it in the case length gauge. We're good to go. Got to do about 200 or so more.